Welcome to the Mound Visit podcast on the Top 100 Sports Network. I'm Casey Honigbaum, joined as always by the 13-year MLB veteran and all-star Jason Grilli. We want to remind you before we get started with today's episode that if you want to watch the podcast, you could do so on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, give the video a like. It really helps us out. You can also listen to the podcast if you just prefer to do that. And you can do that wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that jazz. And today's episode is pretty special. We got a couple of good topics to talk about. Specifically, we're talking about Jacob DeGrom and his emotional press conference he had after finding out about Tommy John surgery. We talked about Alek Manoah and some of the mental hurdles he's going to have to go into to sort of overcome what he's going through right now. And Grilli, if anyone, is good to talk about that because, you know, he's been played in every level of the minor leagues and has definitely had his fair shares of ups and downs during his career. So some really interesting insight there. And then lastly, we'll touch on Luis Arraez's pursuit for 400 and what that means for his MVP candidacy. So without further ado, let's get into this week's episode.
All right, June 7th, Wednesday, baby. I always look forward to talking to Case and all the hot topics. So thanks for tuning in. We have show episode number 19. Talk about all kinds of bodily harm, noises, functions, and what these freak shows can do in the major leagues, man. Because there's a lot of freak shows out there.
It sounded like you were about to start talking about farts.
Well, that happens in the clubhouse. It happens on the mound. I've shit myself plenty of times on the mound, right? So, like I said, get you some TP, a hot dog, a cup of coffee. Tune in, man. We're going, man. We got lots to cover. Wow, there's a lot happening in the big leagues, the minor leagues, wherever.
What should we? I mean, what do we start with? There's so much to.
Let's start with.
Go ahead.
You brushed your teeth this morning, right?
Yeah.
All right, you shaved this morning, right?
I did. Yep. No, and there were no casualties like there were a couple. Yeah.
You had a heavy bleeder. I've been bleeding from my allergies. I've had some serious gut blushing nosebleeds from the allergies. I think the pollen count's down, so it's good.
Yeah.
And I'm able to do the show. But I was just sitting there, man, and it is funny when you get out of the shower and you kind of start analyzing yourself, right? We all do this.
Yeah, of course.
Whether you admit it or not, because you got all these Instagram feeds of all these people all shredded and, you know, got the Rocky Balboa music and all these inspirational quotes from who knows, right? And you're sitting there going like, what did I do today? Well, I threw down another double cheeseburger for lunch with a good Coke and fries. And I don't have that time right now. I don't have that time unless I wake up at 4 in the stinking morning.
Yeah.
But I'm getting there because my kids are getting out of school. And so, like I said, if I could press play on what my mind says, it'd be a 4-hour show, bro. A lot of sidebar segments. So if there's a shrink in the house, you'd have a field day with just talking. I mean, let's be vulnerable. Let's talk. Get it out on the open. But, I was sitting there thinking, and I'm not going to say my good friend's name. I talked to him this morning about bodily hair where, you lose it in some place, it grows in the other. So this is a good clubhouse story, right? I'm not going to mention names, but you might be able to figure it out. So a good buddy of mine, it was hairy. He had kind of a sweater developing on his back of his triceps, his back, hairy back, starting to look like a little bit of a werewolf, And
we've all got that friend.
Yep.
Yeah.
And his lady was not getting too turned on by, the sweater he was wearing. So apparently he took it upon himself to go get some electrolysis, right? Get the shock laser therapy, whatever. You have to go to it, and you can remove hair by shocking the hair follicle.
Like laser hair removal, that type thing?
Laser hair removal, right? Okay. Instead of the tape ripping it right off your chest,
I only think about that scene in what is it, the 40-year-old version when Steve Carell is getting
Yes. So instead of him doing that painful procedure, apparently he saw something in the mall and they were doing something or whatever, and he signed up for wherever they were doing the marketing and promotion. So he went to the office, and you have to go to like 5 treatments to make sure the hair follicle dies and it won't be there ever again. Some people do it even on their face and for their beard line of all that because you start shaving case, right? It starts creeping up to your eyeball, hairy eyeballs. So my buddy decides to sign up for this 5-step process, right? With these hair follicles. He goes to like 2 of them, right? And the lady's like, "Hey, you got to come back and schedule the next appointment." And he's like, "Hell no, that shit hurts," right? And so she's like, "Well, I just want you to know, like, you paid full gig for the whole treatment, and the first 2 actually stimulate hair growth, so you might want to come in and." Because he's like, "Heck no, that stuff hurts. I don't want to go back. I'm done." So he goes, "I actually paid $1,500 to be hairier than the actual was." So I thought that was a funny way. Like I said, when you wake up and you get in the shower and you're like, "What's my day going to be like?" Mine's just, I want to get some abs back, bro.
Oh, there you go.
I'd like to see, instead of the one ab, I'd like to get a couple back. Because I found a picture. Another friend of mine asked me to do this thing. He's doing something with AI and imaging, and he asked for 20 pictures of me, and I'm like going through my list, which I never really take a lot of selfies and whatever, but there are some mixed in there or just pictures I have. And so I saw one when I was actually bulldozing and building this complex after I retired, and I saw myself. It was a hot day, and I had my shirt off and just like kind of kicking back, and I don't know what it was, but I did take a selfie that day. I think I was feeling myself pretty good.
Yeah, there you go.
And I found it, and I'm like, God bless, I got to put that up on my mirror, man, and motivate myself to, instead of hit the inside of the refrigerator. I'm just finding ways, man. I'm reading stuff about cortisol and how much that helps you get fat. I'm reading about after dinner you should drink a cup of black coffee. Right, curbs the rest of it. It says it curbs
appetite suppressant. Right?
And go brush your teeth right after you have the coffee, because then it's like, what do you want to eat after you brush your teeth?
Right.
You're not really in there. Go to bed, man. Go to bed. You don't keep eating. All right, so that's enough, man. What a waste of time. You guys will never get that back. I'm sorry. That's a big time rant. But I think real.
Everybody goes through that same thing, though. That's a very relatable topic. Looking in the mirror and being like, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I got my souvenir cups.
Oh, that's a mean one to hold up in front of me right now. After they just beat the Mets. That was
I was a Brave at one point, and
that's
I
true.
always used to take these because drink as much water as possible. But this one's got wear and tear, so I might have to go back. I am going back for a Braves alumni deal. I'm bringing my son against the Pirates late in September, and so I'll have to get a new Braves cup. I keep all these like collector's items, but they're not collector's items. It's just a
if you get the chance when you go back for that alumni, do myself, Mets fans, and the Mets a favor. Maybe drop a couple laxatives in the food. I don't know, because they need to. It's time for them to chill out. Oh,
man. Well, listen. Speaking of which, former Met DeGrom. Let's kick off with our boy DeGrom, because what a talent! What a sad story. He's having his second Tommy John. The guy's a warrior, one of the best pitchers, signed a big deal with Texas. And to see that guy in tears, man, it hurt my heart this morning, because I know that pain.
Yeah.
I know that pain very well.
I watched that video, and obviously I had, a lot of emotions around that, especially with, like you mentioned, him being a former Met. That's my team. DeGrom was my favorite player when he was a Met. I mean, watching him pitch, you think about greatness as an athlete. When he was on the field, there was nobody better at their job than Jacob DeGrom.
I wanted to be DeGrom, dude. I sit there and I'm like, God, even as a player, you look at players, you're like, I wish I could be like him, man. It's an admiration, not a jealousy thing.
Yeah, of course.
Because you sit there and you're like, God, I could be better. How do I be better? But, there's a boatload of God-gifted talent. And when he was at his best, man, the swag that man had and what he's done. But to see, like I said, to see him in tears, to be that vulnerable. I guess maybe that's why I opened up about being vulnerable this morning, making fun of myself or just telling some silly stories. For a guy to be that way, and some people may knock that, but that's real, man. That was real emotion that he's saddened by having to go through that. Because when baseball goes on without you, and we talk about that a lot, right? Keeping the uniform on as long as possible. Here's a guy that's set, and some guys would be like, dude, I could chill. He's still making millions of dollars. Right. He even said in his interview, I love what I do. And that just showed me, man, I'm a bigger fan of the person, because for somebody to be that dedicated to his craft, his team, right? Because that's really what it's about. You're playing for your teammates.
Yeah.
And to not be there and have the game taken away. I know, I have no doubt the doctors are going to do the best job on him, and it's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's a very lonely place, a very depressing thing. You go through all that depression when the game's taken away from you, and just sulking in the work that goes into it, man. So
it really is something I think that gets overlooked sometimes, because obviously there's the entire aspect around injuries like that, and you can think about, fans get frustrated, and especially you're paying the guy $40 million to pitch, and he's not going to pitch. But and I think especially going into this season with DeGrom, I think there was some people questioned, does he? Because nobody expected the Rangers to be where they are right now, but they're a legit contender. I mean, at this point, like with DeGrom coming back, people were looking at them as a World Series contender. So now when you look at it, I think that press conference, that clip of him getting emotional yesterday when talking about that Tommy John surgery, I really think that put it into perspective how much being on the mound means to Jacob DeGrom, especially if you're Jacob DeGrom and you know what you can do when you're at your best, you are unhittable when you're at your best. And I think I can only try and put myself in his shoes, but I got to imagine, you can do this better than I can, but when you know that you have that talent, especially at the major league level, it's got to be maddening when you keep having setback after setback. Yeah. And now to know that you're not going to be able to do that for at least a year.
Yeah, that's the story of my career, man. I had a stress fracture right after my major league debut, which caused me one Tommy John. I've had Achilles, I've had torn quads, I've had, so I could speak to being injured and having to overcome that to play back and get back. And especially, he where he's safe is that he's got a big deal behind him. They're going to give him every opportunity. They're going to give him the good carrots and the good apples. Yeah. And he's Jacob DeGrom. So the talent and the won't go away. It's just, can he get himself back to that feel and confidence? That's really what it is. Because again, that's a great segue into the mental part of it, man, where, again, we always got to talk about the physicality, but the head that drives the car and the engine, the mental and the mental capabilities and the mental confidence that you have to have, right, on everything that you've done physically to prepare yourself in pregame, all the rehab he's got to do. But then you shift over to a guy like Manoah, who just got sent down all the way down to reconfigure. This guy's an all-star, man, and is having the setback just for whatever reason. I got to believe it's probably something mental. He's not having success anymore.
I have to agree, because, I mean, you look at Manoah's been in the major leagues for 3 years now. And, his first year that he came up when he was a rookie, over 111 innings pitched. He had a 3.2 ERA, 139 ERA plus. I mean, he was the real deal. And then last year he followed that up. He was third in Cy Young voting. He was an all-star, 2.24 ERA over almost 200 innings pitched.
Looked like a great teammate, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, he fun on the mic. They mic'd him up, and he's striking dudes out, like having fun with John Smoltz. And
that was awesome. Yeah, he was a great guy to watch on the field. He was a fiery competitor, which is what baseball needs.
Yeah, and you sit there and go, that's a confident person. If you could sit there, I wouldn't want to be mic'd up while I'm doing my craft. Me personally. But to sit there, I was like, man, that's some freaking
Well, is that because of some expletives that might have come out while you were
Yeah, I don't know. I had to talk to myself a lot. But Yeah, but when you're letting your team down, you're letting yourself down.
Yeah.
You feel like you're letting your teammates down, and then you're letting the city down that you're playing for. It does shake your confidence
Right.
as a grown man, and even as an all-star caliber pitcher. So it's something that I think you learn even as a good player, because thinking about, I'm blending all these topics that I'm kind of bringing together,
Yeah.
that you and I had talked about, we want to talk about. To have confidence to win batting title after batting title. You look at a guy like Rod Carew,
Sure.
right? Back in the day, won 7 batting titles, and I think the last few years of his career hit from like 305 to 339 and didn't win one. So to still be awesome,
Yeah.
but not be the greatest
Right.
at awesome is unbelievable, because you look at the track record of somebody who won 7 straight batting titles or whatever, and in those other 3 years that he didn't or whatever, he still hit above 300. Like, people would have career banner years if they hit 305 or 339, especially in today's game, right? Buck 70 or buck 98, you're still in the big leagues. Crazy.
I think it just goes to show you how, for fans of baseball, I think they know this, but I think things like this really put it into perspective again, how difficult this game is. And, you think about, and we talk about it all the time, and we talked about it with Drew Maggi and, finally making it to the major leagues. That's one thing, and it's an amazing accomplishment. And once you do that, you're able to say for the rest of your life that you were a big leaguer. But it's another thing to stay in the major leagues, and then not only stay in the major leagues, but continue to have success. That's why, that's why these legends in the game are so revered by the fans and by writers and by everyone, by their teams and their teammates, because it's just, to have success and continued success, sustained success. Those are two tough ones to put back to back. It's incredible. And I mean, you look at Manoah, like I said, you go from a 2.24 ERA, you're on top of the world, and now all of a sudden you're 1-7 with a 6.3 ERA. It's just, the game humbles you. I feel like
it's always hard. It's hard to get there. It's hard to stay there. It's hard to do hard better, right? That's what you think you can continue to learn. And if you can sustain that, and that mentality, that intense mentality, dude, it's so intense.
Yeah.
That's why I laugh. I tried to laugh all the time.
Yeah.
And you gotta, I think that's where a lot of the mental stuff, just in life, you see people that seem to be happier, that charismatic and energy. There's people that are struggling with that because they're trying to fake it till you make it, right?
Sure. We
don't have good days all the time unless you're these little gophers out here having a good playtime all day long. But they might have their struggles. They can't dig the hole, get out of that hole they dug. But that's what I think everybody's got to find that. And in order to be great, you got to be good all the time. And that intensity of that, man, is unbelievable.
What do you think now? So it's interesting to think about now. When we've talked about this, a former All-Star now being sent, I mean, he's not even just sent to AAA, he got sent to rookie ball. So now that he's there, as someone who's like yourself, who's been, up and down, have gone from the major leagues to the minor leagues and back, and then finally sticking at the major leagues, what is this process like for him now? Because I feel like this is something that fans might not know. What is this process going to be like? Are they going to be holding his hand? Is he going to kind of have to go down there and take a look at himself and think about, what does this look like as a major leaguer now getting sent down to work on some stuff?
Well, if I was able to talk to him, I played every level of baseball in 2001, right after my broken arm, right before I had Tommy John. It was kind of flaring up, and 2002 I wound up having Tommy John. But I played every level of baseball, and the approach that I took it was like, man, I had fun. The minor leagues and the shenanigans that goes on there.
Yeah.
If he can lower his ego to that level and really try to have some fun, right? Because the spread table is not good unless he's going to buy it for these guys, and maybe those guys are going to be excited because you got a big leaguer going to buy him some good food, and that truthfully happens. So I know that's going to be taken care of. I think there's some perspective that might come back and rejuvenate him, because sometimes you do lose that. Something's going on mentally, whether it's personal, whether it's just confidence shaken. And I think if he just learns that, man, I went through all this already.
Yeah.
And the fun of what I am. Like, look at DeGrom. We're tying in all this stuff together, these topics. DeGrom, the pain of having the game taken away from you. Well, Manoah, no different. He might not be hurt physically, but mentally, it's that confidence to just have fun, appreciation for what you put into it, and the love and respect of this game. Like you said, it will humble you if you don't. And I'm not saying that he doesn't, but we don't know. It's the unknown, and we can only surmise what he might be going through. But I hope for him and the Blue Jays, my Blue Jays, man, I love the Blue Jays, that he can restore his confidence, because he can do some damage on the field. We need that guy back. But if he can find that groove, I hope he has some fun in the minor leagues and realize, like, man, these bus trips or these showers and the catering to what you get as a big leaguer, he's going to go back and go, whoa, man, because the sparklies, like I said, all the chains and all the flash that we see in the big leagues, it's the only place to play this game.
Yeah.
But the road to the show, man, is you fall back and you go, if you're able to do that, and it will definitely be a monumental part, an integral part of his comeback.
Yeah.
When that'll be, who knows?
It's interesting, because I think about this too from the standpoint of, he was one of the slowest working pitchers in the major leagues last year, and obviously now I wonder how much the implementation of the pitch clock played into some of his struggles, because I think a lot of it is, I think about this from, it's a mental and a physical thing, because as a pitcher, especially as someone who pitched in college, I feel like I could speak to this too. You have sort of a mental routine that you go through. I did before every pitch, and it's not like, a long routine, but it's something that you go through every pitch. And some pitchers have a longer mental routine, and some pitchers have a shorter one. And for his, whether it's a physical or a little mental thing that he does each time before he throws a pitch, I wonder if that was something that was, I guess messed up by the pitch clock. And now, he's rushing. He's not necessarily pitching now. He's throwing, and maybe he feels like he doesn't have time. So I'm wondering, like, do you think that's, because I know you didn't have to pitch with the pitch clock, but in your opinion, do you think that somebody who was an all-star, a top 3 Cy Young finisher, do you think he'll be able to overcome something like this? And if so, how long do you think something like that takes?
Confidence is something, dude, the mental part of the game, just the mental part of just having a good day in life. When you get shell shocked, right? When your confidence is shaken, it could be, there's a slew of, scenarios. It doesn't have to be in sports, just in life. That zings you. You're cutting somebody off, the cop pulls you over, your confidence kind of goes, oh my God, I got to be, like, you just start getting amped up. So
sure.
In the situations, but something that is every day, and how you're viewed, and worrying about what people think about you. And, athletes, man, they're under the microscope, right? People tweet about it. People blog about it. You got the MLB.com website and all these writers writing about you. And,
right.
And, again, thinking about the vulnerability of DeGrom showing true emotion, man, that's a real dude right there. To see someone that we see as a superhero kind of just be himself and show how much the game is going to be missed. It's going to feel like an eternity. I know every time I was hurt, it felt like an eternity, man, being in a training room with nobody clapping,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think.
You think he'll be able to overcome it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do. Like I said, I hope he has fun. Like, go back and just.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Go have fun, dude. You might have put so much pressure because, Manoah, he's had a short big league career. right?
Yeah, it's only 2 years. Yeah.
It took me 15, 16 years to be an all-star. Like I was digging, trying to do shifting here, hurt, up and down.
Right.
This kid, you sit there and you go, and I'm not trying to compare myself, but I go, you got to be an all-star early in your career.
Right.
So people sometimes, I think, get scared of success. Instead of scared of failure, you go, how do I do that again?
Yeah.
How can I be an MVP again? I've had a conversation with an MVP
Yeah.
behind closed doors, and he was having a tough time. I'm like, dude, it's hard to be that good all the time at that level. And that's why there's a Hall of Fame, because these guys figured it out. Those guys had the confidence to be there. But just because you're not there doesn't mean you're not a good player. If you're in the big leagues, you're a good effing player, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I just hope that he maybe I'm figuring it out, for him, or maybe I'm just reliving some of the things that I wish I could have turned around myself, speaking out loud. Sometimes you are scared of success more than you are failure because, right, if you don't hit 400 or you don't hit you go 0 for 3 today, you get a pat on the butt like, hey, man, hang in there. You hit the ball good 3 times, but you went 0 for today.
Yeah.
It affects your mentality. Sometimes when I didn't have my best stuff, I would pray for lasers that were giving up to be hit right at people and put up a 0. Because sometimes that 0, I got lucky. And you got to be lucky too. It all has to blend, bro. It all has to flow, from everything's good at home to the fans are, I'm digging myself. I feel good. That ache in my arm or the hamstring that I think was going to blow out. I got the trainers got me right, and I didn't miss time. There's so many things that guys go through.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard. I always I saw it from a fan. I hate when people go, "Oh, you suck," or I'm like, dude, the guy's working here, man.
Yeah.
And to get personal with the guys and sit there, the envy or that rival feeling that a fan can just blow up a player on any level nowadays. I say, man, you got to understand, man. These guys are human beings too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to a more happy subject. There's a silver lining, but you mentioned it very briefly, and I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation because I think about, when you think about baseball, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier, this is, that sustained success is so important, and it's why guys, it's why the statistics and the all-time legends of the game are so revered. But I think one of those numbers that we always look at as almost like an immortal type number is the 400 batting average. Luis Arraez right now, what he's doing, 212 at bats so far in the season. He's hitting 401 just through, I think we're at 61 games now in the season.
Yeah, John Olerud would think was the last day. He was like exactly.
I think so.
Same type of after 60 some odd games.
Something like that. I can't remember the guy. I saw the list the other day. There was Olerud, Todd Helton, Chipper Jones, like some of those guys were the last ones to.
They were comparing where he's at the same amount of at bats and same amount of hits and all that. But yeah, dude, mentally, either you're just having fun and you're that good of a hitter, but I think also, man, the shift being taken away for this to happen also plays into it too, man.
Yeah. Well, so Arraez has always been a high average hitter. He's a career 326 hitter, but to hit 400, it's another level, obviously. But I wanted to ask you this because this is another fascinating conversation. And
against guys blowing 98 to 100 these days, right?
Well, there's that. That part of it too is incredible. But so I'm looking at Arraez's numbers, right? And I just mentioned them. 401 average. He's got a 946 OPS, which is, that's tops in the league right there. But now I'm also looking at, because I'm thinking about this from the MVP conversation. I look at the guy who is supposedly the front runner right now, and Ronald Acuna Jr. He's got 12 homers. He's hitting 329, 26 stolen bases, 963 OPS. So obviously a little bit of a difference there in terms of the power numbers. Arraez has only got 1 home run, but he's not a power guy. We know that. So I want to ask you this. at the end of the season, say we get there, say Acuna hits 30 home runs and steals 60, 70 bases, whatever, hits 300, but Arraez hits 400. What does the MVP conversation look like? If they're kind of right around their same numbers with their on-base percentage, their OPS, all that stuff, but clearly one of them, is impacting the game aside from just the batting average standpoint in Acuna. Do you think it's enough for Arraez to hit 400 and that kind of be the only part of his game that's super significant? Do you think that's enough for him to win an MVP?
Oh, yeah, good question. I think a feat like that and the pressure of that coming at the end of the season, I think that would be even. I guess I don't know. I'm not a hitter. I've never been a hitter to be that good of a hitter either. They go look at the home run chase, right? The Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire home run chase. The pressure of that, just a perfect game being thrown, right? I guess you could kind of. It's not. There's nothing. It's hard to compare. It's hard to compare even. What you said. This guy doing versus Acuna Jr. At the end of the season. What's MVP worthy? I don't know. That's why we play it out, right? We got all these hot buttons, hot topics. What if you and I were running for president of school or whatever of the United States of America?
A little bit of a difference there, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. How do you compare? How do you compare what is better or MVP worthy, or what gives you the title? Or the right to earn that award, right? To say this is better than that. That's better than this on a whole. That's the scale, and that's why numbers do play into. I think each thing is invaluable to a team on a numerous levels because if guys hitting 400, I'm going, dude, what are you eating for breakfast? Right? There's guys that just like rubbing up against them, like, hey, dude, let me have this go after you're done with it because I need whatever good mojo you got going. I don't care.
Seriously.
Whether it's home runs, stolen bases, this or that. If you're hitting in the big leagues, dude, like he's hitting, it's incredible. And every night.
I think, well, go ahead. Keep going.
No, just every night, just producing.
Oh, yeah. I think it's interesting because it almost goes back to what we were talking about last week when we talked about Judge and Ohtani. And it was like to beat out Ohtani for MVP, Judge had to do something historic. And he did. He broke the AL home run record. He hit 62 home runs. So I don't know if that, if Acuna has an unbelievable year, it's a different kind of thing, but it's sort of a similar conversation where it's like Arraez would, if he hits 380, amazing still, of course. Even if he hits 390, it's incredible. But I think it's one of those things where, if Acuna stays on his season projections and finishes with 35 homers and 70 stolen bases like he's projected to do right now, it might take, would it take Arraez hitting 400 to beat him out for that? I don't know if it's that similar thing.
What's funny is that as you're talking, I'm thinking of something that just hit me. When you talk about the American League versus the National League, it's almost like the American League, we're talking Ohtani and Judge, and it's all this dominant power, strength, fastball, domination when you talk about those guys. And not that those guys in the National League aren't, but just, I don't know, for me it's always been kind of that way, that the flair of the National League kind of is secondary to some of the glam of the American League. Is that, you know what I mean?
Because it does seem like your American League, your best player in your American League is that big bopper, that dude who's gonna. I mean, I guess the last guy like that I could think of in the NL was Stanton won an MVP in the NL, but then he got traded to the Yankees immediately. So it's he went right over to the AL. So that's an interest.
That just hit me. I don't know why, but
my grandpa always says the same sort of thing because he's a Yankees fan. So he's always saying, he's like, I always notice the kind of the power game more in the American League. And it's probably going to start, it might even out over time. My guess is that's probably because of the designated hitter was in the AL for so long. I guess that just from a basic standpoint, that's my best guess. But I know what you mean.
Look, who was the last person to hit 400? And look
Ted
at
Williams.
I know, and so it's kind of like I'm saying that, but yet the guy who hit 400 was in the AL.
In the AL,
yeah. But I guess it's just the way the game has evolved, or the type of player, the type of game that was played.
Sure.
And again, Rod Carew, tap dancing. There's an old name, All-Star, Hall of Famer, and won 7 straight batting titles, and then
nuts.
Even toy with 400 as often as he did.
Yeah.
Right? 373 a couple times, and I'm just insane amount. To me, it's like as a pitcher, I'm just sitting there going like, if a guy's that hot, hitting 400, I'd rather just instead of just hit him with one pitch. First base, dude. I'll give you first base. Right? Sorry, I got to hit you. They just. But I'm trying to save some bullets in my arm to get out the guys that aren't hitting 400.
Yeah.
Right? If you're coming up, the chances are
you're going to get a hit.
Yeah, he was 0 for 2 last night, and he wound up getting 2 hits. He was hitting 500 on the night.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I think I'm thinking it's because the 400 batting average. It's just such a cool conversation because neither of us were around the last time someone hit 400, so we don't know what it was like to witness that chase. Because even though guys hit 400 earlier in the 1900s, it was still an incredible accomplishment by Williams because nobody had done it for a little while before that, and it was that chase. And leading up to the last day, he could have sat out and be at like 399.3996, so it would have rounded up, but he decided to stay in, got a couple hits, hit 402. But and then you think back to Tony Gwynn in the strike shortened season in '94. He was hitting 394 when the season ended, and I know a lot of people think.
Yeah, but you know what? Think of to hit that amount. Think of the days you go and have a hit streak, right?
Sure.
Some of these guys that are tap dancing with that number, they're going in there and they're getting a hit every night.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Right.
You're guaranteed to see a guy that's tap dancing with that. He's getting a hit.
Yeah.
Whether it's a key hit or it's just a bloop single or an infield hit, it doesn't matter. He's getting a hit. That's what's been happening. And you see long hit streaks.
Yeah.
Right? Which, again, the pressure of that and that number, hitting streak. If you're tap dancing with 400, you're going to be in the topic of, what does this kid have a hit streak of? I'm sure it's about 25.
Arraez? That's a good question. Yeah.
He's probably got a good hit streak going.
He's got a 1, 2, 3, 4 game hit streak.
Okay.
So,
that's a
but
streak.
one of those games he had 5. He had 5
still
hits.
A streak, man. That's still a streak. Yeah. I'd rather go 4 days in a row. That's a series. I get a hit in the series.
Yeah.
He's hot.
Yeah.
And see, that's the stuff as a pitching staff. When you do a scouting report, and you're going, okay, the Marlins are coming into town, or whoever's coming into town, and this is how we're going to pitch this guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just throw it down the middle and hope that he hits it at somebody. He's hot right now. I don't give a shit if you're looking at this pixel. Some scouts like, we got to throw it in this hot. This is a heat zone. I'm the heat maps. I'm like, dude, you want? I'm pitching to a person in real space and time. I said, there's no pixels out on the field. Okay, trying to throw it to an area and hope that I jam them or throw them off speed pitch that gets them out in front and rolls over on one.
Yeah. Which might be tough to do with Arraez right now because he's not doing much of that at all. I just thought about this too, and I think the MVP, that whole MVP conversation, and we talked about this too last episode, but I think I think people look at it the wrong way, kind of, because hitting 400 is incredible, and it's an incredible accomplishment. But I think a lot of baseball fans look at it, and I'm guilty of this myself too. It's like, okay, well, if he doesn't win the MVP for this, then is the accomplishment itself, is the accomplishment celebrated enough? And I think we can celebrate these accomplishments. Like, I look at it last year, and I'm probably in the minority for this, but I thought Ohtani should have won the MVP last year. Even though Judge had an amazing season, I still think it's okay to recognize these incredible achievements, these historical achievements, but also understand that just because you have that number on your stat sheet
doesn't win it all the way through, right? I get you.
It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't know, because I mean,
it's like talking about a weighted average, right?
Sure,
you got a weighted average in school. You know, I don't know. We try to put values on things so that there's an understanding, or to persuade as to why. We'll find the reason why that someone's more deserving than enough. Because, like I said, let's face it, the poster children of MLB are the guys that are making the most money.
Sure.
The guys you want on the dish or on the mound in those key moments. And they're able to do freakish things physically because they're mentally preparing themselves. They're just elite. They're the elitist of the elite.
Yeah.
And when you got something that is so hard to quantify, and like I said, when you give a piece of hardware that at the end of their career, what gets them into the Hall of Fame? Well, he's a 3-time MVP. He won how many Cy Young awards? He won this many batting titles. He was an All-Star. So there are measuring, sticks that we used to quantify what gets you in the Hall of Fame. So that's why these for those guys that actually can go and get those awards and chase those types of things, to me is like, whoa, it's a next level.
It really is.
Your next level to even be considered and throw that around. I'd love to get into a mental discussion about that and really understand that.
Let's save that for our next episode, because I feel like we could go for another.
Oh yeah, well, you know what I could tie into that?
Yeah,
I just watched. Eric Burns has a documentary, and I've been meaning. It was on my browser for forever. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Eric Burns was an unbelievable player to have on your team because he would run through a brick wall. But it's called Diamond to the Rough, and this guy ran 100-mile endurance run. It was an incredible little story, and it made me it made me feel like, that's what I said. I'm teasing myself about eating and in the mirror, so maybe that's where it's coming from, because I just watched it. But we're talking about the mentality of what hard is and how to do hard better.
Yeah.
Because this game is hard, life is hard, and the intensity of playing 162 and all this stuff is why we probably gravitate to baseball, because it's relatable for that sense. Whether you've played it as a little leaguer or you love watching it, you're broadcasting, you love covering it, we love talking here, passing that baton on to these amateurs who are trying to get there and see how hard it is just to get a college scholarship. Right? And get on a team to play at the next level. Whether you're a high school player and to get to the next level, what that takes, and what being at the right place at the right time, showing up for that tryout and balling out that day of getting the attention to show off. It's hard, man.
Yeah.
So, going back to that documentary, if you haven't watched it, dude, check it out. I'll send you the link for that. But if we got to have Burns on the show, I don't think you and I would get a word in.
I love that guy. He is awesome. He's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I tried to do when I was with the MLB Network I had my Achilles surgery, and they brought me on to possibly be a host on the show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did a little trial run after I put my Achilles out, and I was hobbling around the studio. I have to try to find some of that footage, but he was on there, man. And I was like, man, this is hard to keep up with the charisma and energy of this guy. He's the next level.
He does a great job with his the No Filter network that he does. That stuff is awesome. So he's very fun.
He's doing awesome. He's doing Forrest Gump very well, man.
There you go. That's right. That's right. Great way to end the show.
Yeah,
and I
man.
think
Listen, it was awesome.
it always is. And I think a fun thing to end off before we go, and another good reminder: subscribe to the show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. Watch the show on YouTube, Mound Visit. Just look it up on YouTube. You can watch the show. Subscribe to that channel as well, so that you never miss an episode. Turn the notifications on. Like the video. Let us know what topics you want to cover. Hit us up on social media. We're always there. Keeping an eye on it, and you do your Instagram lives a couple minutes before the show, so you can find that on Jason Grilli's Instagram, Grilled Cheese 49. And then I think to end off, we talked about the MVP, we talked about 400, and we talked about Ted Williams. So I guess we did that whole conversation for nothing, because when Ted Williams hit 406, he didn't even win MVP.
There you go. So. See, you got your answer. You answered your own question. Dang it.
That's right.
That's funny. Yeah, he's not an MVP. It doesn't matter if you hit 400. So don't try. Why try?
Yeah,
it's very hard. Why try to hit 400 if you're trying to win an MVP? You just don't do it.
Yeah, you're just not going to do it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Anyways, any words of wisdom before we get out of here?
I think I'm going to order Uber Eats. It's my breakfast today. Uber Eats from First Watch. Today's show has been brought to you by First Watch, Gillette. What else do we talk? Hair removal.
Yeah, we did talk about laser hair removal. What did we? At the very beginning of the show, we talked about bodily functions. So this show's always brought to you by bodily functions, I feel like.
Well, let me ask you this: if we're doing hair removal, if you did hair injection, right? And if you could take hair from anywhere in your body to cover up, if you took one from your butt and put it on your head, would you be a butthead? That make you a butthead? All right. Anyway, we're going off kilter. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Go brush your teeth at night. Stop eating.
Yeah. And if you do laser hair removal, go to every session.
Yeah, this was all over the place. This show 19, and we have nonsense going on, but there was some good topics. Hopefully, you just fast forward or rewind to the good part. All right, the rest of it's nonsense. It's time you guys will never get back, but we appreciate you joining us here on Mound Visit. If you got some hot topics, magic tricks, let's get you on too, fans. We want to get you involved. So thanks for tuning in, Case. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you soon, man.